the idea of Andre Zorn. Um, he used to use three colors. It was yellow ochre, cadmium red medium, black, and white. So he used the black to gray, and I'm using the burnt sienna to gray. So I instituted one red for a grayed down red orange. But it's a matter of how you use the colors, how you cross mix. But it's a lot of fun to play with color, and this is another reason why I use limited color in the workshops, is to get them used to cross mixing color. You do not need a bunch of color on your palette to make it appear full color. Okay, I am going to wet the sky in the background and then come down around, but I am going to wet around the house at the beginning for the fact that I want to maintain the integrity of the house for the time being.
Okay.
And so I'm going to take my pointed oval brush here, or pointed whatever, my rosemary brush, and I'm going to go right around. I'm going to go right over the chimney, though. And I'll take a little bit more time doing this here just to get, because I do want to get some of the clouds in and then have it fall down basically into the background and then work up from there. My little girl out there is being noisy this morning.
Not as noisy as she usually is. She's usually
No.
locked up in the bedroom.
So I'm going to take the ultramarine blue, and the sky is very light. In fact, it's the lightest thing in here, and a little bit of burnt sienna, which will, excuse me, which will help gray the color down. And since I wetted, you're basically going to have enough time to play with the background here. That's the benefit of working wet on wet, is that it gives you the opportunity to lay another color. So I'm going to add a little bit more burnt sienna and a little bit more ultramarine. There we go. And I'm going to drop in a little bit warmer color here and there, which will help when I lay down some warmer color down below. It will help unify the painting. But this gives me plenty of time to go in and alter things and manipulate it and add things without having those blossoms that we're always looking at. I don't know why I've got a little bit of a blemish in the paper there, which is very strange. And I'm going to bring that color right on down into the trees here. I'm going to lay down a coating of blue, which the green, bluish green, will go on top of that. And when you do that, it adds, whatever you add on top will be influenced by whatever you added on the bottom. So the sky is going to be a little bit lighter, a little bit airier, and I'm going to drift in some other clouds here at this time. The timing of the watercolor is very important, and I'm looking at how the water is glistening on the paper here. So I'm looking at how that works. And I'm going to add a little bit of green to this. This will give me a little bit different color cloud. I don't want to overcloud the sky here, but it does make a little bit more of an interest. I'll probably leave it alone at that point. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of green here with the blue and then go back up in here and grab some of the grayed down color. And I'm going to be very lightly putting in this color down in here. So the influence of the blue underneath will give it a different flavor. And I'm not worried about working with anything at this point that has any detail to it, but I'm going to get a little bit greener as I come down into the grassy area here. So I'm going to take a little bit of the green. I'm going to grab some burnt sienna and then go back and mix it up in with the area that's a little bit grayed down with the blue. And I'm going to have big swipes across the front here, allowing things to drift into one another. Going to add a little bit more green and a little bit more blue. And then I'm going to take and darken up the foreground a little bit. So I'm adding a little bit more green and blue, and I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna in it to gray it slightly. Just so it all runs together. Now, this has been up here quite a while. It's still a little bit fluid, but I want to take a smaller brush here and block the house in as a very light color. So I'm going to take a little bit of this color from up here with the green, take the blue, add a little bit more green to it. And I'm going to, excuse me, give the house a little bit of color. And I'm changing the color as I go through the house ever so slightly. I'm taking a little bit of the brown, a little bit of the green, a little bit of the blue, so that the house doesn't have, or just isn't one color. And I'm leaving a little bit of white here and there. Not concerned about too much of that. And I'm going to add a little bit of brown here to the roof with the green, and the same thing in the background, so that it will all fall together. And there's numerous ways you can block in a painting, depending on how you want it to look. I could have started off with the house and worked out, which is something a little bit different than working from background to foreground. And I'm going to take a little bit of the darker blue gray and add it in here just to give this a little bit of variance. And then what I'm going to do is just simply leave it alone. Oh, I will take the toothbrush and add a little bit of green and blue together and give this a little bit of texture down here. Now I'll stop. So I started off with the sky. I wet the sky, went around the house, and then I mixed the ultramarine blue, a little bit of the burnt sienna, or a little bit of the green, and then the burnt sienna to get that kind of grayish blue up in here. It's a little bit more blue than what the photograph is, but that's fine, as long as I get the values right. And then I came down in here and added that blue down in here in the background. Then I went on top after it sat there for a while and added a little bit of the green so that there's a little bit of variance of color changes from here to here. And then a lot of the green down here with a little bit of the blue in it. And then I added various colors to the house so that it doesn't separate from the rest of the composition. And the last was spatter.
Dale, are you back to the house again? Could you go over that?
I added the green and the blue together, predominantly green, and I added that with a little bit of brown up in here. I added more green down towards the bottom because it relates to the grass. I warmed it up here on the roof and so forth, because then it will stick out a little bit more and act as your focal point, being a warmer color. When I put the background in, the house will separate from the background quite a bit. Right now, everything is very close value. Oh, it's really snowing now. It's pretty when it snows up here. Hang on.
If that happens again, this little tiny button right here.
Yeah.
Next to the volume.
Yeah.
Just hit it.
Right.
Are we? Oh, it's one of those telemarketers. Copy. Do you want to go in the bedroom? I know I have to. Here.
We're not talking today. Step off of it. Always have to do it.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Judy.
Oh, that's okay. I understand.
Put this up a little bit higher. Your Apple ID is being used.
Yeah.
Allow.
Yes.
Done. Oh, you want the number?
Yeah.
198383. Any questions at all, Judy?
Um, no, maybe I could show you what I've got. Oh,
Okay. Everything at the beginning is very light and airy. Um, that's fine so far. You haven't done any. I like the sky. It's nice.
oh, okay. Good.
I have a flaw in my paper right here.
Oh, yeah.
It's either a Sputnik or an alien. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a pine tree right over here to cover it.
Oh, good.
Once in a blue moon, I get a bad flaw in the paper that you can't do anything with. All right. Um, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm not going to touch the sky right now. I want to see how it relates as I proceed through the painting. But I'm going to work with the background and a little bit in the foreground, work around the house at this point.
Okay.
So I'm going to take my Chinese brush here and I'm going to mix up with the sap green, the ultramarine blue, and I'm looking at adding a little bit of the burnt sienna to this to slightly warm it up. And I'm going to dry brush a little bit. So I'm going to take a paper towel and tap off some of the pigment and fluid. And I'm going to start off on the right-hand side in this case. And I want to make the background a little bit more colorful. I'm going to paint around the small building here. A little bit more colorful than what's in the photograph and also to relate back to the actual house itself. So I'm going to take a little bit more blue here. And doing the dry brushing allows things to come through from the background. It gives a little bit more depth, as I'm always telling people about. And I'm going to add a little bit of character with the feeling of some of the pines here. And while I've got this wet, I am going to go up and I'm going to kind of fill that nasty little thing that's at the top, towards the top of the paper. And I'm going to start at the top right here to kind of disguise it just a little bit. And I'll have to balance this off somewhat. It can kind of be a scraggly little pine. Now we don't see it. And I'm going to add another one right next to it that is a little bit different color. We're going to add a little bit more blue to it. Like so, and I'm going to fill in this space just a little bit there so that we have kind of an ending with that. So I'm going to go along and I'm going to take the blue again, tap the brush off, and I'm going to fill in this space here a little bit, but I'm going to take a little bit of the burnt sienna here because there's a tree between the back of the house and this shed. And I'm going to add that in. Kind of takes up, gives it a little bit of softness to the shed, and then bring that up like that. So it kind of, excuse me, kind of hides what's going on because I don't want all the edges of the buildings to show. And then I have the background here. I want to add a little bit more blue to it so it recedes a little bit more. I'm going to go right across the chimney because I'll put that in later. But I always try to keep the background from coming forward. And I'm going to add a little bit of accent of blue over here. Now, at this point, I'm not really looking at the photograph all that much. I'm always telling students that you want to paint what you want the viewer to see, not what the photograph is telling you. And with the more experience of painting, you can be a little bit more creative with things. Now I'm going to take the toothbrush and I'm going to add a little bit of blue right back in here into the trees. So it becomes a little bit more colorful. And what I have to do is kind of end the trees right about there and then make a break in the mass of trees back here. And begin on the other side of the chimney, just with a little bit, not much, and then come down in front of the house. Now, I'm going to take the green and the blue again, different combinations. I'm being much more careful around the house. And this is an interesting combination of color because you're working with two cool colors and a warm color. But I added a little bit more blue to it here. And then I'm going to add a little bit more green to it. So again, tapping the brush off so you can control the color a little bit more. I want to add a little bit of brown in here. So I'm making the trees more descriptive over here, less as I go off to the right-hand side or left-hand side. And I'm also going to cool them down with more blue.
From the left.
On the left, yeah. Because warm colors will attract the eye more and they'll come forward, which I have a little bit more warmth than this over here. I'm adding just by tapping the brush down with the amount of water I have in here, gives the suggestion of a little bit more description. And I add a little bit more green over here. And then I have a few, I'm going to very lightly put these pine trees in, and I'll define them later. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the bottom of this a little bit cooler in temperature, and it's going to be, of course, it's going to be a little bit more blue. I'm going to add the shrubs on top of that. And almost using straight blue and allowing the pigment around it to kind of flow into it will help soften some of these things. And then I'll define these shrubs out here a little bit later. And I'll take just a damp brush along the bottom, and I'm going to soften that so that I'm always going back looking at trying to keep my edges always as soft as much as possible for as long as I can, so that I don't end up with hard edges everywhere. So the last thing I'm going to do, I don't think I'm going to come out to the grass out here. I'm going to do that next with the house. Is I'm going to take the straight blue here, and I'm going to add a little bit of blue accents in here down at the bottom. And I'm also going to take a little bit of the burnt sienna, because I need to transfer a little bit of this color out in front, but not all the way over. And there's always a few dead pine trees up here anyways. So everything is fairly light and airy at this point, for the most part, considering what reference we're using. And again, I'm going to take just a damp brush, not a lot of water in it or hardly any water, and I'm going to go along the bottom of this so that it maintains its softness. And I'm going to do the same thing back here. Like so. So I use different combinations of the green and the blue over here with a little bit of the burnt sienna to gray it, because the burnt sienna will gray down those two colors, because burnt sienna is already a grayed down red-orange. So that's why I use that. And I'll define some of this later over here, but various colors back and forth. And I'll bring this up so you can see it closer. And unfortunately, this is glistening right here, but it will dry fairly soon. If not, I'll use the hairdryer.
Okay.
But I've got a lot of color in here. I don't know. There we go. You see a lot of color this way. So I just let them meld together. I'll worry about the shapes and the other darks and other values later. I'll be right back. Okay. I think I will use the hair dryer here just for a second. That should do it. And I'm going to go rinse my sponges out. Okay. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask. No such thing as a dumb question.
Well, I'll show you what I have so far.
We're in no rush. Okay. It's hard to see, Judy, what you have in here with the colorations. Do you have
Yeah.
kind of a rainbow thing going on?
Okay, what should I do?
Well, do you have a rainbow or not?
A rainbow? I don't know.
Well, a rainbow of color. Can you?
Well, I have some brown in there and
Okay.
um,
Well, the reason why I'm asking is that this color that I put down here is going to act as a backdrop that you can see through to. Some of it's going to be covered, but not all of it.
mhm.
So that's the only thing I was asking.
So you want a rainbow of color?
Um, yes and no. It depends on how much of a rainbow is there. Mine is kind of muted. Let me get a picture of this first. Yeah, because I have just kind of a simple thing going on here. This is more extravagant over here, and I'm going to make this more interesting right over here also. More interesting than this back here because I don't want my eye falling out over here. But this is going to remain kind of simple over here. Now, the thing I'm looking at this part of the painting is how I want to handle the foreground in the house. And the house in the photograph is fairly dark. It's not as dark as the background, of course, but could I make the house lighter than what is in the photograph, or should I make it darker? My initial idea when I was looking at this photograph is to add more green to the house, and I think I'm going to make it warmer by adding more brown, and I think I'm going to keep it lighter than what's in the photograph. Altering the value pattern is quite common. Well, you can't see the backyard hardly. It's snowing so hard. So
Great.
that's
Good.
my thought on the house itself. So it's something that I'm always looking at how I need to adjust the values to make it correct with what I'm dealing with here. So I am going to take my smaller 6-inch round brush here, and I'm going to warm the house up. It has the green tones on it already, but that's fine because it'll influence what I put on top of it. So I'm going to take the burnt sienna, and I got a little bit of blue on the thing here to help gray that down just a little bit. And I'm going to start at the top of the house, and I'm going to paint around the windows. And I'm being conscious of every 3-4 brush strokes, even in a small area, to change the color or the temperature or the value of something to make it semi-interesting. So I added a little bit more blue to this, which gives it a little bit more of a grayed down feeling. I'm going to add a little bit more brown to it over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of the straight burnt sienna, and I want to add it a little bit right in the center of the house here. And then kind of take it and move it over very slowly, because this side of the house is in shadow. And I add a little bit more blue to this back here to get this darker. But the more color I add in subtly, the more interest I'll have in the house itself, and making it warmer is only going to add to that. And I want to add a little bit of green so that it doesn't become disconnected. And I'm going to add a little bit more green down towards the bottom because I want it to pick up the color that is down at the bottom here, which is the grass. So I'm going to take this right on over here, and I'll worry about the shadows and so forth later. So we have quite a bit of color showing up on the house. I'm going to jump to the shed back here for the fact that I want to do the front of the house next, and I don't want the side to bleed into the front. So we have a very dark side of the barn here. And then we have the front of it. I'm going to let that just bleed in because I don't want a lot of interest in this little shed back here. I'm going to leave the roof alone at this point. Now I can go into the front of the house, and I can always darken it up later, which I'm going to do. But I want it a little bit darker to start with. And the same thing up here in the top. I'm going to add a little bit of blue to that. So even though it's a very small area, I am trying to give it a little bit of interest. It is our focal point, which I'm always trying to relate to the students and make it interesting. We'll do the detail on it later to make it more substantial. Painting around all the windows. Like so. And then I'm going to darken this in once again. Like this. Now, I didn't do the roofs because I didn't want that coming in on the body of the house. So I'm going to take and I'm going to create first some shrubs out in front of the house. And allow those just to kind of bleed up into the bottom of the house. Like so. So they maintain their softness at this point. And then I'm going to take the green with the burnt sienna with a lot of water. And I'm going to go across very quickly. And I allow the brush to skip across the paper, which working with the indigo paper gives me that opportunity to do this and feed in to create a little bit of a pattern here. But I like that previous color showing up. And then as I come forward, I'm going to take the green again with a little bit of brown in it, and I'm going to add the ultramarine blue, and I'm going to come down here at the bottom first, and I'm going to squeeze this in. So this is going to be, and I'm going to give it a little bit of vertical texture. And then come in here with a little bit more water. And I can always lift that driveway out. I'm not concerned about that. And then what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of the straight burnt sienna while it's wet. I'm going to tip this up just a little bit. And I'm going to add some warmth out in here to pull the color of the house out so it's not isolated. So I'm trying to make this a little bit more descriptive than the photograph. The photograph is a very average photograph. I'm trying to make it a little bit more than just what's in the photograph. So I'm going to take my 6-inch round or number 6 round brush, and I'm going to take a little bit darker version of what I put down here. And kind of make some weedy type feeling, very casual, like the farm has not been taken care of for a while. And then bring up just a little bit up into the mid-ground area. Not quite as dark because our darks get lighter as they go away from us. And that's where I'll leave that. So what I did with the house is I warmed it up quite a bit from what the photograph is. I used a lot of burnt sienna, a little bit of the blue. And as I came down the house, I added more green to those colors so that it picked up the color of the ground here. So it feels like it's more seated, not plopped on the ground itself. I painted around the windows and I did not touch the roof. I added back here, I subdued this little shed thing back here by using ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And then I just brought over the burnt sienna with a little bit more color in it. So it's just casual, very light drift of color. What type of paper are you using?
300 pound. I don't know the exact brand of it because
the paper I'm using has quite a bit of texture on it.
yeah.
The indigo, which is what I prefer using when I'm painting landscapes and so forth. It gives me a little bit better opportunity to
Lost you.
texture.
I lost your video.
Okay, hang on.
All right.
Somebody's calling again. Don't these people know?
No, it's that, and they will call like crazy till Saturday. and then the
Oh, the healthcare.
healthcare enrollment ends on Saturday.
Hang on, we'll get you going right side up.
There you go.
There we are.
Dale, okay, the left-hand side of that house,
The front?
yes.
Okay. That's
the-
this is the front. This is the side of the house.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, whatever it is, the front of the house then.
Yeah.
Looked like you have quite a bit of brown on the upper part of it.
Yes, quite a bit of brown and a little bit of blue here in this area here, a little bit of blue there. That's so that it turns the corner and goes from light into shadow.
Where's the light source of that?
Light source is coming in like this.
Okay, all right.
It's an overcast day, which makes the light source less evident of what direction it's doing. But since I took the picture, I know which way it goes.
Okay.
And I'm liking changing the color of the house from what the photograph was, because everything looked too much the same. This makes the house pop out more. Actually, it makes it more look like a brick home. How much snow are we supposed to get today?
I don't know, you've got my phone.
Oh, never mind.
Okay, Dale,
Yes.
um, I've just finished the house, so I kind of need you to go back over what you did in the foreground, please.
Okay, that's fine. I took the green with a little bit of the burnt sienna in it, so it relates better to the house. And I
Okay.
very quickly, with the side of the brush, I used my calligraphy brush and I dried it off and I took it very quickly on the side of the brush to show the texture of the paper, but it kind of bumped along. And then I pressed further down on the brush here so that it showed a little bit less texture. And then I came down the drive, I had a little bit more ultramarine blue right through here and down in here. And then I dragged the brush this way and that way, and I used the green and the blue, a little bit of burnt sienna, and I made this darker in here and kind of created an abstract pattern of grasses. And then I spritzed it with a little bit of burnt sienna after that. But
And
it's,
then you didn't re-wet the paper or anything, did you?
what's that?
Did you re-wet the paper?
No, I did not re-wet the paper.
Okay.
I will be doing that for the sky. What you're doing is you're tempting fate when you do that a little bit.
Okay.
So I will show you the simplest way with more control of re-wetting the sky. Not as much as we did to begin with, but just enough to drag the fluid around a little bit more. But that will be last, basically,
Okay.
because I want a little bit more. The sky is too light, and I want a little bit more description in there. Not too much, but a little bit more. But I really, for this painting, using the three colors, I really wanted to pull away from the photograph to a great degree, because we're not painting with what I'm seeing in color. I changed the values and the colors quite a bit from the photograph, just to be a little bit more creative. Long as they work together, you're fine. Looks like we got about 8 inches of snow. I'm reading about that.
Well, I can show you what I've got so far.
Yeah. Let's see what you have.
Okay.
All right. The cabin could have been a little bit warmer, but I'm going to say leave it alone
Okay.
because at this point, it'd be too difficult to warm it up too much. So I'm going to tell you to leave it alone.
Okay. All right.
Everybody's, as I'm always telling in workshops, everybody's painting comes out a little bit different,
Yeah. All right.
different from mine. But I'm always looking, is it correct within its own frame of reference? And you're doing fine on that.
Okay.
It's not the idea of copying, the idea is the procedure.
Yeah.
So you ready to start again?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I just want to show you the difference again. This is what we're working with today. And same three colors, and you can look at how this was used.
Yeah.
You know,
A little
so
more blue and brown in the
yes,
water.
a lot more blue and brown. This is showing a little bit more green.
Mhm.
So I'm working with, I'm making it a different look on the color palette with the same three colors. And this is something that an artist that I was talking about on Facebook Live was doing years and years ago, that they haven't come to conclusion of exactly what three colors he was using. His name is Andre Zorn, and he used to use three colors, and they said that he used yellow ochre, cadmium red, medium, ivory black, and white to paint. He was a wonderful painter. The black he used to gray, but the black he had a lot of blue in it, which they don't make that. They make ivory black, but they don't make it the same way anymore, of course. But it's interesting on what you can do with limited color. And I'm always working in limited color at the workshops for the fact that full color is 6 tubes of color or more. But I like to have the students work with limited color that they can make it appear to be full color. So, okay, here we go.
Okay.
What I'm going to do first is I'm going to take the toothbrush and I'm going to take a little bit of water and spritz it out in here. Not a lot. I want a little bit of texture showing. And then I'm going to take the paper towel and pull up some of it. I'm going to show you a little bit closer what's happening. It's giving it a slight texture. I'm not using a lot of water, but I'm actually lightening up the background without touching it with the brush. And I'll show you in a minute here. On darker areas, it will appear to be working a little bit faster. Lighter areas, it doesn't show up that easily. But it's very subtle, and I'm going to do a little bit down here too. It's a different way to create texture. So what I did up here, Judy, was that you can see up in this area, it's gotten lighter in this area here. I'll bring it up a little bit closer. And you can see the texture, it started happening down here, and this got a little bit lighter. This gives me the opportunity to create a little bit more depth with the subject matter. So that's why I did it, just for variety. Now, I'm looking at this from a distance, as I like to do when I'm painting. Step back from the painting where you're at, find out what you want to do. I'm beginning to feel that I'm not going to do too much with the roof. Once I get the windows done, I'll see what the roof looks like. I'll give it a little bit of a tint, but I'm not going to go as dark as it is in the photograph. I'm going to go the other way around. But
Okay.
it's a judgment call, and there's a certain point. I always feel that when you get to a certain point in your painting, you allow the painting to tell you what it needs to a certain extent. Not all the time and not everything that you're doing, but I want to get this area right in here a little bit darker to push the house out. This I'm going to leave alone over here. And then I'll travel across this way and I'll work with the windows and a little bit of the foreground. So I'm going to start here around the focal point because we have to have more contrast of value, a little bit more detail, and I have the warmer colors on this to create a stronger focal point. So I'm going to start with the area around the house. I'm going to take the ultramarine blue and the sap green, not over mixing the color, just kind of give it a little bit of a variety of color here. And I'm going to add a lot of water to that, a little bit more blue. And I'm going to tap the brush off. And I'm going to work a little bit darker with various colors of blue and the green and the brown. I'm going to work around the chimney at this point. So this will begin pushing out the house a little bit more, which is what I was looking for. And then I'll start with the tops of the trees here, which need to be more descriptive. I added an accent of dark blue right in here. And I'm going to do the same thing right back here. Sometimes just a couple brush strokes will give you the illusion of what you want to show without going into too much detail. And this is where you slow your process down quite a bit. As I said, I'm not touching this over here for the fact that it doesn't need to be strengthened anymore. And if I overwork it, then I have to overwork this. So I'm always being conscious of going very slow at this point and not jumping ahead too quickly. I may put a little bit of a dark right there and then take it and spread it out a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do with this roof back here is different than these roofs. I'm going to tint it a little bit with a little bit of a cast shadow or tone it down, cool it down a little bit so it doesn't compete with these roofs. Now I'm going to come out to the front of the house and I'm going to work the front of the house and I'll slowly simplify things as I go off to the left-hand side. And then I'm going to come in very carefully and follow the roof line a little bit more diligently than I did to begin with. But you always have to slow your process down. And then I'm going to come out to the front of the house. And then work that in. And I'm allowing the edge of the house here as it draws back to be kind of lost, so that doesn't look like we're cutting out the house and plopping it down. So having lost and found edges become very important. Some edges you don't need to show all the time. And I'm being very casual down in here. And as I travel across, I'm going to make it cooler with the ultramarine blue. And I'm going to alternate the value a little bit more, so it's not all the same value, not all the same color, not all the same temperature, just so there's enough variety in this to give this what I'm trying to proceed with, and then simplify. And then I'm going to darken in this tree just a little bit over here, and I'll look at it for a while to depend on how I want it to look. How much effort I want to put into it, and then just kind of curtail it down so that we have a variety of things going on over here. I can't stress trying to get that variety in enough. So now I have these shrubs that are down here that are darker, and I'm going to take the ultramarine blue and the sap green and the burnt sienna a little bit, and I am going to go in again very carefully up against the house. I'm not going up into that area, but I want to kind of pull that down a little bit. And I want to show what I initially put down. I don't want to cover it all up. And I want to give a variety of movement through here. Then as I go off, I'll simplify it, not put much detail into it. I'm going to scratch out a few things with my fingernail, like so. I'm going to take the toothbrush with those same colors, and I'm going to cover the sky, because I will have overspray. And I'll just bring it right across like so. I'm going to use a little bit of ultramarine blue here, or a little bit more dark right in here. Like so. So that this pushes that back, this comes forward. Now I'm going to go into the windows a little bit, but I will address the roof just a tad. I'm going to use a little bit of blue-green. And I'm not going to make it as dark as the photograph. Just to give it a little bit of character to it, I'm going to add a little bit of brown or the burnt sienna up in here. And then take a wet brush and soften it quite a bit. And add just a little bit in there. So I'm getting rid of those white spots to a certain extent. And I want to get rid of this white line here. Tone that down. And I'm going to take a little bit of the burnt sienna and I'm going to put it right here in the corner, just a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing with the roof in the back. Except I'm going to tone it just a little bit more than I did the other roof. And then I'm going to take the brown or burnt sienna, put the chimney in, and let it bleed out. Let's just say it stained the roof a little bit. And I'll do the same thing with this one up here. And I'll let it bleed out into the roof. Just a little bit. I don't need to go in and create a lot of detail on the little chimney like that. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run a dark over the building for a little bit of the overhang. And since it is a overcast day, the cast shadows are not going to be as dark. Because our shadows become less contrasty with the light to a great extent. And then I'll darken up as we turn the corner here, a little bit darker underneath there. And the house is starting to take a little bit more shape. I'm going to add a little bit more right here. Now, looking at the windows, I'm using a little bit of the blue, a little bit of the brown in there, and I'm going to come around to the front of the porch, and I'm going to simplify those quite a bit. They're on the side, they're in shadow. I don't need to show everything too much. Same thing with the window up on top. Now the door itself is got a little bit more darkness to it. Let it sit there a minute, and then I'm going to take the paper towel and just pull up just a little bit of it. Not too much. Now, going off to the other windows, I'm going to take the burnt sienna, the green, a little bit of blue, and the top window up here is much darker. Not too dark, but much darker than the other windows in the house, except for the window in the back. This window down here has a little bit of blue showing in it. And I'm going to take a little bit of burnt sienna and accentuate the bottom part of the window with some warmth, just to give a little bit of difference and draw the eye to it a little bit more. And then I'm going to add a little bit of that burnt sienna in on the house again, in certain areas, using a drier brush. So I'll take the burnt sienna and I'm going to dry the brush off, taking off a lot of the pigment, and I'm going to add a little bit more character to the house. Hang on, I got a little bit of light coming in here. Don't go away. I got to block the light. Always comes in the middle of the painting. There we go. Okay. Where was I? Okay. Little detail on the windows and so forth I'll worry about later. There's a tree that I wanted to put in that's right up against the house here. And I'm going to take, and I'm going to lift out with my 1-inch brush here. The trunk of the tree, like so. And I'm going to pull this all the way up here, like so. And I'm going to pull out a few branches here and there. And I'm going to leave that just set there just a minute. And I'm going to take the burnt sienna and the sap green here. Gray it down a little bit. And I'm going to add some of the bushes down towards the bottom here, or shrubs or weeds or whatever. Like so. And I'm going to get my there, I can find it when I want it. Oh, there it is. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife or the blade, and I'm going to pull out just some of the later branches. It's easier to do it that way. Now, after I have added a little bit of brown up in here, I'm going to stop in a minute. I'm going to add a little bit of brown here and then down at the bottom, just so the house has a little bit of continuation of that color. And that's where I'm going to stop at this point. So what I did is I spritzed a little bit of water on this area here, a little bit down here, pulled it up. Then I made this darker in here, and I made it darker out in front of the house so it pushes it out. And then I just allowed this to travel across. I might do something with this later. Then I went back into the house, toned the roof down so that it doesn't separate value-wise. So it's not too dark, and it's a little bit lighter than the body of the house. And I added a grayed down blue with the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna. And then I put the windows in, which I'll delineate a little bit more later. Added some more warmth in on the house to make that pop out. Tone the roofs down, as I said before. And then I added the shrubs out in front of the house, this tree, and pulled that out with the X-Acto. So it's coming much different than the photograph is, but that was my initial intention, is not to follow the photograph. I'm going to get some more water. I'll be right back, because right now it's too dirty to work with. What I'm gonna have to do in this next round is add more of the burnt sienna out in here, a little bit out in here to balance this off. But that's fairly easy, a couple brush strokes.
The bedroom.
Like everything's coming in from the northwest.
Yeah, that's what they said. They did go online. There's no snow over us on the radar though. Weird. I checked 43 hours.
Yeah. Any questions at all?
Well, I can show you what I've got.
Yeah. Hold it up a little bit higher. There we go. Okay. The thing that you'll need to do, because the background's coming along fine, the house is working fairly well. We're going to tone down things on the house again on certain things, but you need to put more texture, Judy, through here. So you can take a look where I'm pointing.
Yeah.
Through this area right here.
Okay.
So dry brushing, use the toothbrush a little bit. You can always put paper toweling across the top of the painting so you don't spatter everywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I spatter everywhere too. That's why I use the paper towel for stuff like that.
And so just kind of the same colors, but just,
Yeah, it's various colors that are similar but not exactly the same. So you can add a little bit of warmth down there that you can do, but just more texture through this mid-ground area.
all right.
I'm going to be paying close attention to the driveway next time. Uh,
Mhm.
I almost forgot about the mailbox out there. I have to pay
Oh,
attention.
yeah.
And then some detail on the house. And then we'll see what it looks like if I'm done or not. And of course, the smoke going up in the air from the fireplace.
Now we drew some lines. I can see them on yours and I can see them on mine above that tree line.
Right up in here,
Yes.
that's the smoke that
Oh, okay.
I still have to put in.
Okay. All right. Sense.
I'll be doing that this time around. Because I'll start with the house again and work out in different directions from that so that things become more coordinated, a little bit more unity. Background is basically done. Because if I do too much of that, it's going to come forward on me. Don't do too much with it now.
Okay.
Keep it simple.
Well, let me show you.
Okay.
I think it's enough.
Yeah, that's better. Okay, good.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Take a picture.
Yep. Just to make sure, I'll take another picture. Okay. Now, there's a bunch of little things that you have to do towards the end um, that I've been looking at. The first thing that sticks out to me that I don't like is that I have these two trees on the end right here, and I
Mhm.
want to give a third one that's a little bit taller. So I'm going to take that and make one a little bit taller with the um, ultramarine blue, a little bit of the sap green, and a touch of the burnt sienna. And I'm going to put that tree right about here. But I have to put in another one. The reason being that odd numbers are better over here. This one over here is fine, but I'm going to bring up another one right here. And I'm going to take a little bit of water on my brush, and I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine blue to it and widen the trees at the bottom. Fill it in just a little bit more, fill this in, so that that kind of helps balance it off. Now, the other thing is that on the house itself, I need to put a cast shadow in right here on this roof from that part of the building. Minor thing. Tone this down. It's a little bit too bright. And I'm going to take some of this darker dark here, and I'm going to put in some accents of some darks around the window here and underneath the ledge. So it has a little bit of, and put in a doorway back here, very simple. And a cast shadow underneath the eave there. And this is going to run over and has a cast shadow right here. Minor little thing, but I notice it, so I'm going to put something in right there. I have to add a little bit more darkness underneath the eave up here. And I need to add just a little bit of a darkness underneath this eave, not as much as the other one. And this needs to be a little bit darker. Minor little things. And this can be a little bit more dark. And then I'm going to put a little bit of accent up in there. Bring the door down just a little bit further. I'm going to get rid of the white in the shadow over here, or the light. I don't want to see any light over there. Now, the other thing is that I'm going to add a few more things to the foreground by using some of the green and some of the burnt sienna to slightly warm it up. Tap the brush off, and I'm going to put it out here just as a texture that helps move the eye a little bit. Not too much. And I'm going to tone this down back here. And what I need to do is to lift some of the roadway up so I can start forming the values around that. So I have a little bit of the road here I need to lift, and that will bring in some of the light that is off the sky to help balance that off. Just a little bit, I'm going to leave that dry. And I have a little bit of a walkway up to the house that's kind of overgrown. Just by lifting it. And I'm going to lift down in here, a little bit here, a little bit there. I'm not going to have a straight line. I just want to indicate where the road leads you, helps lead the eye a little bit. And then I'll bring that out as we move. I'm going to bring this out just a little bit here. And I need to pull that mailbox out. So I'm going to make it nice and shiny up here on top just by lifting it. And I don't need to make it too prominent, especially since it's all by itself out here. But I do want to get it light enough that I can kind of delineate it a little bit. I'm going to put the post in that hold it up very simply. I'm going to lean this up just a little bit. And I have a shadow side of the box here that is over here, the front of the box. Like so. A little bit too dark right there. I just want to show a little bit of it. If I noodle it out too much, it's going to be way too much. So then I need to put the flag on it. Remember, I forgot to do that as a kid with our mailbox up here, and my mom said the mail wasn't picked up. I says, I think I forgot to put the flag out. She wasn't too happy with me. Now I'm going to go into the road a little bit, be a little bit more descriptive, especially in the hump on the road. And it's a matter of a couple brush strokes. Don't overthink it. And then down towards the bottom, I'm going to put some of the darker, taller grasses coming up. And I'll show you what to do with that in a second. And some grasses around the mailbox, but I'm not doing it continuously all the way along. I'm jumping around so that it doesn't have full connection. Otherwise, it would be too much. Nothing too much over here on the right-hand side. It's better to learn how to suggest certain things rather than show them everything. A little bit high grass around the mailbox. And then take some green paint with the burnt sienna. And I'm going to work around the top of the mailbox here. which will push it out just a little bit, just right there. Nothing too much. And I want to work with that green a little bit out in here. Like so. And then what I want to do, this is a afterthought, is I want to lift up some fence posts out here. Not all of them looking perfect or deliberate. Some of them falling. Breaks up the background just a little bit. And I'm going to take my smallest brush here, my liner brush, and make up a fairly dark value here. And I'm going to delineate the windows a little bit more. Not all of them equally, but just to give them a little bit more presence. This can be toned down. Some small lines here and there, not too much. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to bring up some darker trees in here. And by the time it dries, it's not going to be that noticeable. I'll show you up closer when I get these put in. This gives another layer to the background ever so softly. Can you see that? I don't know whether you can or not.
Yeah, that looks good.
And then a few back in here just to bring the darker saplings or whatever up a little bit more. A little bit of accent on the shed here. And again, a lot of my brush strokes become very casual at this point, so that they don't look too mechanical. And I'm going to take a little bit of the straight burnt sienna and add a few accents in on the house. Nothing on the back portion here. Now, let's bring out the smoke brush. And I'm going to start pulling out the pigment. Take a paper towel. If the pencil line shows, you can still erase it.
Oh, okay.
I'll show you once this dries. Now the sky is not real dark, so I am going to add a little bit of character to this with my number 6 and a little bit of the burnt sienna with the ultramarine blue in it. Because a wood fire always has a bit of color to it.
And so that's burnt sienna and what?
And ultramarine blue.
Okay.
just a little bit. Then what I'll do is I'll take my 1-inch brush again and kind of pull out a little bit of softness on top of it. And what it's doing is I'm actually erasing some of the pencil line with this, just ever so slightly. And then I added very light grayed down ultramarine blue to the rest of it. So usually when it comes out of the fireplace, it's a little bit more dynamic in color value, as opposed to as it drifts off, it has a tendency of lessening in its value and color. Now, the other thing that you can do for texture, if you wish, couple things. You can take sandpaper. This is like 240 grit or 200 grit, I forgot, 150 grit. It's got a little bit more sting to it. Is that if I want some lighter flowers down in here, shooting off I can take the sandpaper very lightly across the paper. I have to do it on mine very lightly for the fact that it's a softer paper. Well, let's say these beautiful weeds have flowers to them, which some of them do. And I bring in something like that, maybe a little bit out here. Not too much. And if I want to, I can take the X-Acto knife and give a little bit of accentuation to the mailbox by putting a highlight on the top. Not too much. And my post at the bottom kind of disintegrated. Let's see what it looks like with the tape off. Whoops. I always like to look at it without the tape on it so that I can see what it looks like with a border on it.
Looks much better, doesn't it, without the tape?
Yeah. Other people, I know other artists that with 300 pounds, they just allow the paper to float. They paint from side to side or edge to edge. I always tape it down for the fact that it gives me an idea of with a mat on it.
Yeah.
A little extent like that. But I changed the whole look of the photograph on purpose because what you can do creatively with it and change the house. I think now the house is kind of working with this a little bit better. It's not so, everything is so green or so forth. I'm going to take a little bit of burnt sienna and water it down somewhat, tap it off, and I'm going to bring out some of the warmth that I have in the house and move that around a little bit. So that it's not too isolated. And that brings that color out of the house and into the foreground. And I think I wouldn't do any more with it, but this is just so you can see. And added more warmth to the house. I added these dark trees back here. I added these two trees in here just so that we don't have the field goal post feeling. The occasionally I do that. Finished off the mailbox. It's not too bright. It still falls within the landscape colors. I wouldn't want it bright white or anything. I did the smoke up in here, and I want to show you. You could take your kneaded eraser, and I can erase the lines
Oh, yeah, okay.
right through here. If they're bothersome, I would try to erase them. If not, you can leave them. It's not that big of a deal. I can even lighten some pigments back in here a little bit with the knead eraser. You don't want to use a pink pearl eraser.
Okay.
You want to use something that's on the softer side for the fact that you could damage the paper. In fact, they had, what was it? Back in the 70s, they had a electric pencil eraser.
Yeah, I have one of those.
Yeah, it looks like a dental tool. That
Yeah,
they
I
drill.
use it with colored pencil a lot.
Exactly. And my instructor, Irv Shapiro, had demonstrated it on one of his watercolors. He says, well, you got to be real careful with it because you can go through the paper like that.
Yes.
Damage it. One of my friends gave me one, and I tried it. I didn't care for it. You have to keep the eraser real sharp to a point to do little details. And I find that why do that? Because it's too stark looking when you're done.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't think you would even use it on color, or I mean, watercolor.
And so I gave it to one of my students to experiment with. I says, here, I got it for nothing. You can have it for nothing. It doesn't thrill me. And she used it for a while and she passed it on to another student.
Yeah.
So it's not something that thrills me too much about using it. But you can see from the photograph that's in front of you, it's predominantly a green photograph.
It is. Yeah.
What I did is I wanted to change the whole color genre to the photograph, give it more texture, and change the color of the house, which I find to be a little bit more exciting than all green.
Well, I'm gonna, I think I'll stop. I'll show you what I got, and then
Yeah.
because we're about out of time. So
Okay, you're getting there. It's a matter, I added a lot of texture on the foreground because the background is kind of quiet.
yeah.
And the house is semi-quiet. I added a little bit more texture to that and embellishments of the warm color. I made it look a little bit more rickety, which, I like to make old houses look rickety. But the foreground, I added a little bit more texture to it. So it's a matter of what you want to do with it in painting.
Mm-hmm.
And I really did not embellish the background too much, and I simplified it a lot off to the left-hand side.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that. I'm gonna work some more on that mailbox when it dries up a little bit.
Okay. And take your time on the last part. Don't rush it.
Okay.
Usually what I do when I'm in a studio is I'll do a few things on the painting, step back, take a look at it.
Yeah, right.
We're working. I was looking at the painting and I decided that two things I changed from my original thought. Well, I added these trees, which I felt were needed, and I did not go in and darken the roof. I thought that would fall into the background too much.
Yeah, I agree.
I allowed that to come out. And then I thought, well, I need to add some high grasses here. And the dark here allows the eye to, since it's attracted to contrast of value and color, allows the eye to hop up and over. And I I did not work the road too diligently. I just kind of showed that it's there, which
Just suggested it. Yeah.
just allows the eye to kind of go into it.
Yeah, I like on yours, way in the back where the tree line meets the yard,
Yeah,
that you've lightened up that bottom part.
yes.
I like that.
Yeah, it's when I looked at this when I was doing this, I left this alone, but I kept on taking a damp brush and softening it. And I changed the colors in here to this, and then I very lightly up here took the water with a toothbrush and pulled up some of that darkness in the tree so that this had no confrontation with this over here.
Yeah, that looks good. Well, thank you, Dale.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your
Thanks for coming in.
private lesson today.
That's all right. Whether it's one student or five, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks so much. And
All right. You have a good weekend, and we'll see you
too.
next week.
See you next week, okay?
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.